Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare.
Okay. So we are at the stage of the text where, in approaching the Buddhist path, the advice is being given about a practical practice, about not being too, let's say, overzealous or unrealistic in how we approach our practice, and not to be unrealistic in the sense of, what we might get disillusioned by. So I'll get right to the text. I just want to back it up just a bit here. The point being made as we wrapped up last week was a very just practical, I'm going to back up 2 pages here, practical understanding of how to engage with our lives, let alone our practice. On the path to awakening, it behooves us to study the teachings so we'll know how to create the specific causes and conditions for our spiritual goals and the order in which to do various practices. Then we can practice with delight and enthusiasm, knowing that realizations will come when all the causes and conditions are assembled. So there's this very straightforward approach of understanding how we cultivate happiness, how we cultivate our patience, how we engage more skillfully in the world and what these causes are, and an understanding that they take time, but they will come because we're planting the right seeds. Greeting each day with the thought, will realizations finally come today, will only make us agitated. Such impatience is the opposite of the attitude necessary for our practice to become effective. To grow peas, we first till the ground, fertilize it, plant pea seeds in the springtime, and then water them. When this has been done, we relax and give the seeds time to grow. We don't dig them up every day to see if they have sprouted yet. Instead, we remain content knowing that they will grow in their own time. Pausing there just for a moment. Very same advice with our meditation practice. Right? The way that we gauge a meditation practice is not how focused we are. It's, did we follow directions? Right? Did we follow directions? Did we sit in the right posture? Did we engage in the guidance that we've received? Did we sit for the amount of time that we said we would sit when our mind had wandered? Did we relax, let go of the thoughts, come back to, the breath? Basically, did we follow directions? The mind might have been crazy busy the whole time, and we may have wandered, 1,000 times in a short session. But if we followed the directions and we let go of the thoughts, we came back to our focus, we followed the directions. It's the same advice here. It's knowing that if I keep doing this, I will be more present. My attention will get better. I will narrow the time from my mind wandering to what I'm focused on. The results will come. But if I try to micromanage every single session, and try to hit that focus or that level of bliss or, this thing I'm trying to get, it will actually undermine the whole practice. It's much more, each and every day, I'm going to sit, I'm going to follow the directions, I'm going to engage in this practice. Some days will be challenging, some days really wonderful, most days in between somewhere. But what happens is then over time, my mind becomes more present, I am less agitated, and in my day, I'm much more capable of directing my attention where I like. And so a very similar process here to our practice is once we know the practice, once we receive guidance on these teachings, and we are engaged in these three wisdoms, this wisdom of hearing and teaching, thinking about it, teaching, meditating on teaching, applying these teachings in my life, then we follow the practice and the results will come. But it's important for us to have analyzed and thought about and have some confidence in the directions. So His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, picking up here. Once at a large public teaching, someone asked me what the quickest and easiest path to awakening. I began to weep because I sensed that the person wanted to attain a lofty goal without engaging in the process of getting there. And, it's I think a pretty common thought that happens is, how can I have peace of mind at the least amount of effort, right? And it's kind of like, okay, what's the amount I need to do? Even with exercise, we can do that, right? So they need 20 minutes of physical exercise a day. So, I'm doing 20 minutes. I'm not doing it, 25 or 30, I'm doing 20. And so it's this, I don't want to give up all my habits. I just, but I want to be better. So, what do I need to do, to make that okay? And, of course, His Holiness cried, just recognizing this is nothing but a prison that this person is stuck in. And then he goes on to say that thoughts of great practitioners such as Milarepa flooded my mind. They practiced joyfully, even under difficult circumstances, because they wanted to attain awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. They were willing to undergo whatever was necessary to create the causes for awakening because they were convinced in the depths of their hearts that this was the most worthwhile thing to do. To attain results like these great practitioners did, we must cultivate that same compassionate motivation and enthusiastic effort. So what he's making a distinction here. Is it okay for a human being to just want to suffer less, be a little happier, have a life that's more resilient? Absolutely, right? Do I need to engage in being a bodhisattva to do that? No, you do not. We'd already covered this point of certain causes create certain results. So if I would like to be a little happier, I would like to have more resiliency in my life. These practices of cultivating my attention, engaging in life with virtue, are going to be able to do that. I can bring some wisdom teachings into my life. I can understand that, that person I'm finding annoying is not an annoying person. I'm experiencing them. I'm annoyed, and it's probably because I want someone to be different than they are. Okay, so don't need to be a bodhisattva to get that, right? That it's actually not the person, it's how I'm relating to the person. It's my judgments. That annoying is in me, not in that person. Now, can I start to just live more accurately and find that, okay, well, I'm going to suffer less. I'm not going to be annoyed as much. I can recognize that my life's limited in terms of how many years or days I'll have, and I would like to live these days in ways that are meaningful, with virtue, more skillfully, more accurately, and know that each day is a gift, and apply these very clear directions in my life around just seeking to understand myself and this experience better. And will that reduce suffering in my life? Absolutely. The more accurately we live, the less suffering there is. Not required to be a bodhisattva, not required to be thinking about all other sentient beings. It can be a very self-centered practice in a sense. Of course, part of that is to recognize you're not the center of the universe. So it's also this, natural part of reality is everything in my life is because of others. I only exist in dependence upon all others. And so that's just more reality. Again, don't need to be a bodhisattva to recognize that. And so, yes, we could have a motivation to live a purposeful life in a meaningful way, more accurately, in connection with others, and having a good heart, and eliminate a lot of suffering, be happy, one life, no bodhisattva requirement necessary. The point His Holiness is making is that if you want to be a Buddha, if you want to be completely enlightened, if you want to engage in that path, then there's going to be a different degree of effort and understanding and dedication. So we don't want to sit there and go, okay, well, that's what I want to do, and so I'm going to be a bodhisattva, without recognizing, well, I'm not even sure if I'm capable. I'm not even sure if there's multiple lives. I'm not even sure that we don't get to that degree of commitment and focus until we develop ourselves a bit, until we test some of these things out, until we explore the nature of our experience, the nature of how I engage in the world and the true causes of suffering and so forth. So generally, we're always going to start at this first point of, I just would like to suffer less. I'd like others to suffer less. I want to live more productive, with more happiness, less suffering. And by engaging this path, at some point, we may have that next inspiration of not wanting anyone else to suffer, and then engaging with the level of motivation that he's discussing. But generally, we don't start there, and people who do try to start there don't last very long, because they just don't have a foundation. So don't worry about being there or not being there. He's making a point of what it would take to do a complete path to enlightenment and be a Buddha. All right. So he's pointing out from his side, again, this is His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama. When I cultivate enthusiasm to achieve Buddhahood in this lifetime, in the back of my mind, I have the idea of numerous lives and many eons. Thus, my prayer becomes, in order to serve sentient beings, may I attain Buddhahood. If possible, within this lifetime, but more likely after countless lives. So, really in it for the long haul. And, but, it's possible in this lifetime. So I'm here for that. If we think of attaining awakening in this life, but lack the perspective of many lifetimes, our wish is unrealistic and may lead to despair when we do not progress as quickly as we would like. So there's a lot of spaciousness around the idea of multiple lives, and he's going to make a different point here. A view accepting future lives is critical to maintain a long-term joyful motivation free from both idealism and despair. That this unrealistic idealism, I can do it on this lifetime, or despair that I'm not making the progress. And again, it's an interesting statement here. It's critical to maintain a long-term joyful motivation free from both of these. Now, some people may be stuck right there, right? I think you may go on, let's just say. Some Westerners have genuine interest in Buddhism, but difficulty accepting multiple lifetimes and eons of existence, thinking that this one lifetime is all that exists. They want to see immediate progress, fast food, and fast awakening. But the latter is not possible. I do not know how to help them maintain a joyful motivation given how difficult it is to attain Buddhahood in this lifetime. Some goal-oriented people think of nirvana and awakening as things to achieve, yet they do not want to do what is necessary to get there. They seek transcendental experiences in meditation, but are reluctant to change bad habits such as harsh speech, lying, and taking intoxicants. Here, too, it's difficult to guide them. So those are actually two different points. This one said that if everyone's trying to do this in one lifetime, maintaining joyful motivation, it's difficult. He doesn't know how to guide them in that sense. And many people, may not really grasp the idea of multiple lifetimes. In the West, it's pretty common. It's an interesting thing I think people struggle with. And the point isn't that you need to believe or not believe. I thinking of this one Theravada Buddhist monk who's a scholar on early Buddhism. I mean, incredible practitioner, and has really done all the research on teachings around rebirth and so forth. And it's interesting, in his mind, he, in his case particularly, doesn't get stuck on rebirth or not, even though I think he does believe it. But he said, the point is to live well while you have the life you have, and to die in a way that is meaningful for you, that you've lived well. And maybe it's more important to be curious rather than to have an absolute answer. That's an interesting way of looking at it. And he was even describing time with a person who had all these previous life experiences, is able to chant in a different language that he's never been taught, has all this capacity to do things that he's never learned in his own language and do it in a different language. And he's this person that everyone interviews about rebirth in life, and someone asked him when he's with him what this person's response was around his thought around how he has these experiences, and the monk said, I never asked him. I wasn't interested in different lives. I just wanted to practice with him, and he just wanted to practice with me. And so I never asked him those questions. So with that type of attitude suggests to me is that it's probably a lot more productive to be curious than to feel like you have to have an answer. And whether one believes in multiple lives or doesn't believe in multiple lives, the point of living this life well is the same. How do I die without regret? How do I die in a way that is knowing that I've lived well and that I have engaged in this life in ways that are truly meaningful. And then, having said that, quoting another of one of my teachers, Jetsu Tenzo Palmer, she points out there's no downside in believing multiple lives. Like live as though you do, and there's no downside to that. What's the downside of setting yourself up for a continuation of a life of virtue and meaning and purpose and a path of bliss? Like, what's the downside? There's just, if there isn't a next life, you've lived this life really well, and and if there is a next life, you're all you're good to go. And so she says, if you don't know, why not adopt that posture? And I think that's also an interesting discussion there. Now, what His Holiness is pointing out is that if you do have that view, you'll be able to engage in this life in a much more spacious way, right? And not be as caught up, as triggered. And he says it's very difficult to have that spaciousness if you only believe in one life, if you're limiting yourself to that. And so if you don't know, why would you cling to something you don't know, right? You don't know if there's one life, why would I say that that's the way it is? Where's the evidence that consciousness ends at this life? It's unproduced evidence anywhere. You may find quite a bit of what we call research on multiple lives, lots of books, and you may or may not believe them. But if I don't know, I don't know, which is very different than I don't know, so I'm going to believe this, right? So these are things that I think are really important for us to reflect on in our own lives, and especially if we're engaging in the path of Buddhism, and not try to feel like we need to fake something we're not ready for, and also not limit ourselves, to say, I believe this despite no evidence, right? And what's the value in believing something I don't know? The point His Holiness is making, that if you do have that spaciousness, and then going back to what Jetsu Tenzo Palmer would say, well, now that I have a lot of spaciousness in how I engage in this life, and I'm not as tight, and I'm not in this hurry, I'm not in that fast food, mindset of accomplishment in this lifetime, or it's waste. So the opportunity then is to sit here and think, well, let's say today's a tough day. Well, it's a tough day of 1 week, of 1 year, of many years, of one life, of many lives. There's a lot of spaciousness around this tough day all of a sudden. This is a tough day of 1 week, of 1 month, of 1 year, so many years of my life, so many lives, then wow, there's a lot of space around this tough day. And so that's the point he's making, is that we keep tilling the soil, we keep engaging in the process, and this life will get better, but we don't need to do it all now. We let the seed sprout. So I'm just going to pause there real quick and see if anyone had any thoughts or questions before we get back to that second point he was making. If so, you can just unmute. Okay. And if not, we'll get to that second point he was making. Some goal-oriented people think of nirvana and awakening as things to achieve, yet do not want to do what is necessary to get there. They seek transcendental experiences in meditation, but are reluctant to change bad habits such as harsh speech, lying, and taking intoxicants. Here too is difficult to guide them. And so that's just this important point that I think a lot of people do miss. And what I do off my meditation cushion has an effect on my meditation cushion. If I would like a peaceful and calm mind, changing some of my unwholesome activities is going to help with that. So a lot of times people will want to engage in certain practices, want to do some meditation, want to go do their yoga, want to go do their spiritual practice, but don't want to change their habits and tendencies and some of the things that really undermine the very practices that they are cultivating. Satsuma Tenzin Palmo, one of her observations is that people will come to her quite frequently about how do I get rid of my anger, right? Because people don't like to be angry generally. And she says, nobody comes and asks me how to get rid of my greed. They're not asking how to get rid of the things they like and their attachments and their greed, but they are very interested in getting rid of their anger. Missing the point that a lot of my attachments and greed is why probably causing my anger, and it's very much like that we separate some of our worldly life from our spiritual life instead of recognizing we just have a life. And what I do in my life is creating how I experience my life. So some people can have this very devout spiritual practice and get absolutely nowhere because their worldly life hasn't changed. And some people can have just a much better worldly life without a spiritual practice and be much kinder human beings and have a lot more happiness. So the idea is not to separate these two. They're not two. It's not a spiritual life in my worldly life. I have a life. And am I engaging my life with loving kindness, compassion, wisdom? Am I doing things that are skillful in the way that relate to the world and engaged with loving kindness, compassion? Or am I coming from a place of self-centeredness, attachment, and aversion? Those create suffering. The opposites create freedom. And so that may or may not look like anything on a meditation cushion. It might look like helping your neighbor out or not helping your neighbor out and getting greedy. Or it could look like on the meditation cushion in ways that are very productive because that's a part of your experience now you engage in your life. So that's, I think, also a real challenge for a lot of people is, they even say, man, my spiritual practice is, I'm not really doing it. Well, have you been nice to anybody today? Oh, yeah, I've been nice to people. Okay, well, sounds pretty good. And, that's a practice. So, His Holiness is, again, pointing out how I'm engaging in my life is my practice. So if I want to have freedom, peace, and ease, joy in my life, well, I create the causes for that, right? Wisdom, loving kindness, compassion. And we're doing all right. And again, if at any point somebody has a question or a comment, you want to jump in there, please do. Transforming our mind is a process. Awareness of this brings our attention to the present moment. For the time to practice is now. The time to practice is now.
John, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You hear me?
Yes, who is this?
Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Hey, John. So I know in other situations we talk about particular antidotes to particular problems or challenges, but I was wondering if you could give a refresher about dealing with worldly desire, and something we can do like a meditation or a text or something to help us kind of. I got like different things going on that I'm not sure what to do with these worldly desires, like different things that I want. But I realize I don't want to be attached to those things. But how do you deal with that or get past it?
Yeah. So I know that we did a little while back post, sort of a whole kind of list of antidotes, which I think we can repost, so that it's sometimes very helpful to have sort of specific antidotes to specific afflictions. In terms of, for example, attachments, one of the, just foundational one is really recognizing impermanence. An attachment comes in many forms, so it could be things, it could be your relationship, it could be, this person that I'm very attached to, could be lust, could be lots of things, right? So, but if we take a little time at impermanence, is this attachment something that is really the source of your happiness, and will it last? And we may recognize that in the long term, neither is true, right? That it's hard. I'm trying to think of something that it's a real common attachment for people. So just even status can be an attachment, right? I've worked hard, I've got a PhD, or I've worked hard, I've got this, or and then I'm attached, right? I'm so is this PhD really the cause of my happiness, or not? And if I didn't have it, is this going to be okay? And if I die tomorrow, is the PhD important, or how I treated my kids important? What's going to be important at the time of death? And so for me, when I think about impermanence as an antidote to attachment, what I recognize is in the morning that this could be my last day. Okay, so this could be my last day, impermanence. What's going to be important if I die tonight? What is actually important? When I die today, is it these things I'm attached to? Or is it how I engage with my partner, how I engage with my children, how I engage with people, what qualities I've developed in myself? And so for me, this impermanence of my life helps me prioritize real causes of well-being and happiness. And so I do take some time each day and recognize, that this could be it. And then what I find is I'm a lot less attached to the things and the people, and I'm much more focused on how I'm engaging with the things and people in my life. They will all come and go. All those things will come and go. And none of them will come with me at the end of my life. What will come with me at the end of my life is how I lived my life. And so that reflection for me is a great antidote to attachments in general. another just very practical thing is to look at your attachment and see how much suffering it causes. Okay. Because the moment you say the word attachment, you just said suffering, really. And the delusion is the attachment is the source of happiness, when in fact we just clarified it's suffering. And there's a tension there around it. So is this contributing to your well-being, or is it undermining? And so an analytical type direct looking at it is helpful. I recently talked to someone who had been struggling, some big challenges, life, family, relationship, jobs, careers, and and they make a significant amount of money, like well over $300,000 a year. And that has been a career, and there's been some jobs lost and been in between jobs and trying to maintain this level of economic living, right? And so, in talking to them, there's kind of this idea that if I get this job at this salary or I have this status, I'll be happy. But, kind of looking through it, there's been nothing but suffering. The jobs haven't been fulfilling, jobs have been difficult, they've fallen through. Yeah, the money's been there, the status has been there. And, but actually, their life over this period of time, which is many years, has been in difficult careers, difficult situations, difficult moves, difficult struggles with family life, and unknown periods in between jobs. And the attachment was, I'm worth this much. And so if I'm worth that much in this career, then I'll be happy, when in fact they've attained all that and have not been happy at all during those times, right? And so this is the way attachment works. It's this idea that if I get this, I'll be happy, or if I maintain it, I'll be happy, or if this be happy. And when we're attached, it's actually quite the opposite, right? If I don't have this, I'm unhappy. And then if I do have it, I worry about losing it. And when in fact, if we practice contentment and look at the abundance that we have in our lives, which is vast, right? I mean, the abundance we have is just phenomenal. I think we talked about that a little bit last time or 2 times ago, with, or maybe I talked about Monday night at the other Dharma Center. Anyway, the electricity, the high thread count on our sheets, the way we get to live, the clothing we have, the food that we get to eat, just the abundance of our lives, the people in our lives, the relationships we have in our lives, that if we can't be happy with everything that we have, what in the world makes me think this thing is the cause of that happiness? So there's a few approaches there. And as I say, I tend to think about impermanence. I tend to think about, which prioritizes my life. But I also like to spend time, when I notice a twinge of attachment, looking more deeply at it and seeing the delusion, the exaggeration in my grasping for that. And then, we'll post that list, so whatever your more specific attachment might be, you might find a very specific antidote there. I hope that's somewhat helpful.
Very helpful, thank you.
Yeah, I find it fascinating with all that we have. We can, as humans, sit there and think, well, but if I have this other thing. And yeah, so, and by the way, attachment is different from contentment or we can have a healthy desire to improve, for example, which is, an appropriate desire. We can have a desire to, live with a particular person in a healthy way. But once attachment is always technically defined as exaggerating the qualities about something in a way they don't exist, in a way something they cannot offer. And that creates a great deal of suffering. And I want to finish, I think that's in the middle of the paragraph there. Transforming our mind is a process. Awareness of this brings our attention to the present moment. For the time to practice is now. And that's, one of my favorite thoughts is the only time to improve my life is now. It's the only time you can do it. Now. And so that's why this really important point of each morning, recognizing this day is coming only once. This is the time. These conditions may or may not be here tomorrow. A process-oriented approach also rouses us to examine our daily activities in the light of Dharma and to see that progress is made by transforming our thoughts, motions, speech, and behavior. So again, just, all those things I just discussed, is that if we examine our daily activities, where am I creating suffering and attachment? Where am I creating contentment, well-being, resiliency, transforming our thoughts, our emotions, our speech. And that's not by just changing an emotion, it's by changing our thoughts and our behaviors, these emotions will change. Some of my Western Buddhist students comment to me that Buddhist scriptures talk about either deluded people who consistently create destructive karma, or bodhisattvas whose motivation and conduct are pure. They wonder how to practice when they are in between these two extremes, right? All pure bodhisattva or deluded. Bodhisattva's wonderful deeds are activities to emulate and inspire us to practice. So we're talking about Milarepa, we're talking about these great practitioners. Yeah, they're here to inspire us. The scriptures always present the ideal. If they didn't, we wouldn't know what to aim for and what would think mediocre attainments were the best. So if we didn't know what the gold standard was, we would think mediocre attainments were okay. But no one, except maybe ourselves, expects us to master the Bodhisattva's practices instantly. No one except maybe ourselves expects us to master the Bodhisattva practices instantly. While I admire the abilities of great bodhisattvas and spiritual mentors, I do not expect myself to practice as they do. Given my present situation, by endeavoring to think and act as they do, I am confident that gradually these abilities will take root and grow within me. And this is Holiness Dalai Lama speaking. That, we'll get there. But we need to be where we are. Thinking of the Buddha as always having been awakened creates unnecessary obstacles in our mind. The Buddha is not an inherently existent awakened being. He was once an ordinary, confused being like us, and through gradual, consistent practice, he transformed his mind and attained Buddhahood. We are no different from him. If we joyfully persevere in creating the causes, we too will become Buddhas. All right. Back through that section. And that's, I think, if we can get to a state where we recognize that we have Buddha nature, that it is already here within us, then that's a nice place to rest. That, I've got all this confusion, I've got all these afflictions, they're obscuring my capacity to recognize my Buddha nature. But if I can get to a point where I recognize that those thoughts, feelings, insecurities, limitations are not who I am, they're just what I'm experiencing in a moment or at times. But underneath that, is my Buddha nature that's here. And I have no less than the Dalai Lama or anybody else. And you have no less. We just don't see it. Then there's a nice cushion there, not a rigidness, just knowing, there's some challenges. There's some challenges. But yeah, that's what I get to work on. That's showing me the work to be done. Yes, Mark. I'm not hearing you yet.
That's because I forgot to unmute.
Oh.
I love the paragraph that says transforming our mind is a process. Awareness of this brings our attention to the present moment, for the time to practice is now. And and I think by practice, they're not just talking about meditating, sitting on a cushion, but they're talking about bringing all the things you're talking about to every moment of our lives. And as someone who's gotten less time to have all those moments, it becomes more and more clear to me that, what a great opportunity to transform the way that I perceive others, perceive events through a change in my perspective. The time is now. So that's a great, great reminder. Thanks, John.
Thank you for bringing that so clear. Time is now. And as you point out, that means whatever we're doing. And just bringing a little more attention to what we're doing. We're fully engaged in the practice. Just the awareness that this is impermanent, is practice. Yeah, good stuff here. All right, anybody else before we wrap up?
Yeah, I had something that kind of fits into what we were talking tonight that I've been pondering a little bit lately, and I hadn't reviewed the 10 virtues and the 10 non-virtues for a while because I was kind of thinking, well, I don't do a whole lot of killing and stealing and sexual misconduct and blah, blah, blah. And then it got down to the end. And I thought, what's really causing my suffering is the misperception. And it seemed like, a lot of these the killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, like I'm getting a pretty good handle on that. Covetousness, ill will. But the wrong view seems so vast and infinite that it's not just a neat little checkbox. It's like, okay, got it. This is very specific, and I can probably work pretty easily work on not doing the other 9 before that. And then also the other thought I had was that the wrong view kind of encompasses all the other things. So I don't know if you have a comment. That the only thing I could come up with is it's sort of a progression of understanding. Like the first 9 are a little more of a gross list, and the 10th one, wrong view, is much more subtle and maybe something that comes, the understanding that comes with practice and time.
Yeah, and with and as you point out, right, wrong view is going to lead to all these others. But there's mundane wrong view, and then there's the great wisdom that they're talking about. And And so that's layered. And often here, just a good point where we can really concretely dig into wrong view is cause and effect. And maybe I'm not, in the whole emptiness realm of wisdom, but I can consistently point incorrectly at the cause of my suffering all day long, right? That person is making me angry. Okay, wrong view. And from that person, making me angry, or that person doing that, thing, or however I see that person as independent, self-existent doing this thing, will then potentially have me maybe be a little dishonest, or maybe have a little divisive speech, tell someone about this person, and all these other things I might have some ill will towards them, so forth. So in the wrong view, just starting with the very basis of cause and effect, seeing if I can more accurately identify true causes and results, as opposed to my habituated way of perceiving the causes of my experience and misattributing them. That's a good place to start in terms of the 10 non-virtues. Because once I recognize that, for example, my anger, the primary cause of my anger is within me, it's the seeds that are here, and what's out there is a secondary factor, condition. You sometimes call that a secondary cause or condition. Then I'll have much more capacity to limit my amount of suffering, and a greater capacity, of course, to avoid these other 9. The thing that's tricky about kind of glossing over these 10 is when we think about, for example, speech. Speech is pretty challenging. Do we speak truthfully at all times? Do we speak skillfully at all times? Do we speak in a way that doesn't divide people? And then, is our speech mindful? That there's a lot of subtlety there. I think for me that can be more challenging than ill will or covetousness. And so I think there's also a good spot to really evaluate your process with the speech. For example, they have that noble speech: is it true, is it kind? And I like to transform that third one to, is it beneficial? So is my speech, before I speak, is it true, is it kind, is it beneficial? Right? Is it purposeful speech? And I find that is a pretty solid practice around virtue and non-virtue. But to your point around this wrong view, once I start beginning with the mundane, correct view, which is just understanding cause and effect more accurately, that will eliminate a lot of those others, as you pointed out. But it'll also lead to, as you point out, that greater vastness of this sort of supermundane right view, where we get into more of the emptiness. But focusing first on just cause and effect opens that door. It really opens the door. And it also opens, it'll cut through, as we talked about, our attachments and other things. So cause and effect, very, very, very potent way to engage with the virtues, the 10. It will empower much more capacity for the 10 virtues and avoid the non-virtues. So well thought out. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, thanks. I think that helps make that 10th non-virtue a little bit more approachable and digestible.
Yeah, let's focus there. Yeah, in the sort of Theravada, noble truth, noble lightful path, you're going to find that more mundane, wrong view right there. It's so it's much more, I think, yeah, as you put it, doable, approachable. That's the word you use, approachable. But functional is how I find. All right, well, let's go ahead and dedicate the merit that we have already cultivated together here. And I will pop up the little dedication prayer. There we go. So I'd like to take a moment just to recognize that our time and energy here is meaningful, has an imprint, and we can collectively dedicate our time, energy, the merit and wisdom accumulated for the benefit of all sentient beings and for our own continued spiritual growth. Taking just a moment to set this as a dedication before we read the dedication prayer, that we are using this time and energy to be a benefit to others and for our own continued spiritual growth, so we can be of greatest benefit. And for those of you who care to, you can join me in the dedication. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. All right, well, thank you all so much. Such a joy to be with all of you once again. So glad we didn't die and we had another opportunity. Please be well, take good care of yourselves, and good care of those around you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Om Dare Du Dare.